Well, to find out which leaders are making valid points and who's playing politics, I suspect they all are, but let's bring in someone who put the reality check on this government for 5 years. Kevin Page was Canada's first parliamentary budget officer. He was appointed by the Prime Minister in 2008. Welcome to the show, Kevin Page.
Good to be here.
All right, let's get this normal stuff out of the way here. Is this a real surplus or one that's been derived from deferred deficit spending of dollars? Is it got the GM sale rolled in? Is it, all the other assets that have been sold? Is it real?
Well, it's real. It's a very small surplus, just under $2 billion. And it's real in the sense that the Auditor General has gone through the books. It's not the public accounts yet. We don't have all the details, but, it's a condensed report. But it's real. It's a $2 billion surplus. It's the first surplus after 6 years of deficits. The Conservative government did add, $130 billion to the stock of debt. That's more than 25% of the stock of debt since Confederation. Right. But it's a surplus.
Is it, in your view, an impressive feat in the sense that they've run, of the 7 last years, 6 deficits and 1 surplus? Is that commendable given where they came from? I mean, they had to go deeply into debt, over $50 billion.
Well, they inherited a very strong fiscal structure from a previous government and, relatively low debt to GDP. I think in the context of a global recession in 2009 and 10 and the choice to make a large stimulus package, that certainly added, to the stock of debt. They also made choices in terms of cutting the GST, cutting corporate income taxes, which were deficit financed effectively. But I think with freezes on spending, which Mr. Trudeau talked about, they've been able to bring us back to balance in 2014-15.
Yeah, and this $2 billion turnaround, I was supposed to be $2 billion in red, and now we're $2 billion in black. How did they do that in the context that the oil industry was pretty much quaking by the start of this year and the end of last year? How did they make that turnaround so quickly and unexpectedly? Yeah,
I think, well, again, we're looking in the rearview mirror with this report. So, again, we're talking about a fiscal year that ended, at the end, March 31st, 2015. So, most of the growth, 2014 wasn't a bad year. Like, we didn't start shrinking until January in terms of, economic growth. So in 2014, we grew 2.5%. Right now, we've had 5 months of declines, 1 month of growth on a year-over-year basis, up 0.5%. So, it's a very different year. So certainly they put the brakes on spending. You could see that direct program spending, declined. So, and we don't have the details. So it's possible that again, like Mr. Trudeau said, lapse spending on veterans and infrastructure. So when we get the details, you'll get to see, is it sustainable, that low level of spending?
Yeah, because I remember in 2011, if I'm not mistaken, you sort of looked at the F-35 costs and said, whoa, they're hiding billions of dollars that should be accounted for here, and they're not. You wonder if that trick's being replayed.
Well, there's certainly on the defense issue, I think there's major sustainable issues. We're just within the Defense Department. There's a lot of procurement we've kicked that can down the road. We really haven't started. So there's a bill awaiting, future governments. I think on healthcare, there's been some cutbacks in the Canada Health Transfer. The premiers are screaming for more money. On infrastructure, and again, the feds are only kicking in 15 cents on every public sector dollar right now, where the mayors are asking for more. So there's some big bills to pay down the road.
One thing that's coming up later in the show, I want to talk about it, but I'll ask you first since you know about this. Tom Mulcair, some of his spending ideas of Laurie Graham from CTV got some of these documents, but it seemed to show he piles all the big spending on the 4th year of a mandate, like pushes it way down the road. Is that understandable and acceptable and smart fiscal policy, or is that something that should be avoided?
Well, I think, the NDP, we were told that, they're committed to raising taxes and they're committed to increased spending. It's from an economist, they call it a balanced budget type multiplier. So they're worried about, they don't want to add further debt. So, we talked about debt. The Prime Minister has deficit financed tax cuts, and I think Mr. Mulcair said, well, we need to make the government a bit bigger. They need to, put more into healthcare, more into childcare, et cetera. So it's a different approach. It's pretty common, in a context of potentially some deficit pressures to kind of, hold off a little bit or in the mandate on some of those big spending promises. I think, to launch a child care program is going to take time. You're going to have to get provinces on side. It's not going to happen, right away in 2016 anyways.
Final question on this one. Are happy days here again if the Conservatives are re-elected, deficits vanquished for good, or do you see a possibility of those coming back?
No, I think, well, we have a very different economy in 2015 than we did have in 14 when we balanced the book. So the economy's gone sideways. The Prime Minister talks about, a lot of growth, but when you look at, you lift lift the stone on the numbers, you see that the good sector's in recession. Manufacturing, mining, not just, energy, but, non-energy mining, utilities, agriculture, it's all shrinking. So we have growth in the service sector. We hope to get more growth. It's a big issue going forward for the election campaign.
We'll have to stay tuned, is what you're saying. All right, Kevin Page, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.